Hi there, and welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. I'm sure, like me, that you will have been in meetings at times where you didn't agree with the decisions or you didn't agree with what was being shared with everyone, but you stayed silent. I'm sure that's happened. And I'm sure, like me, that your leader or your manager probably thought that you did agree because you hadn't said anything. The interesting thing here is that very often the leader has misread the silence totally. It's actually information because when people don't speak up, um, it's not because they don't care, it's because they don't feel safe. They don't feel as though what they have to say is going to be useful, and or they don't think it's worth the effort. So today what we're going to be talking about is why your team might be going quiet and how as leaders we actually train people into silence. We encourage that silence by our behaviours sometimes, and we're going to look at what creates a culture where your team are contributing, where there's honesty, and where they can do that with confidentiality. And the key thing is where they will communicate with you really early. So come on and join us. I'm Beth Bergen. I'm a global life leadership and communication coach. And I work with executives, I work with managers, and I work with business owners to help them to build their influence, their authority, and their leadership intelligence. And I'm here live each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Now, as you can imagine, this is a really big topic. This topic of your team being silent, so what's going on, it's a massive topic and it happens much more than we realize. The first thing for you to be doing is this. Notice what you're noticing because the silence is data for you. The silence is data for you. It tells you something. It tells you, is there trust? Is there safety? Are people bringing their past experiences with leaders to the table? What happens is that silence in a meeting in these situations is actually a learned behavior. People become quiet. They didn't necessarily come into the meeting quiet, into like remembering that this isn't just one meeting that we're talking about, it's a number of meetings. But what generally happens is that people stop speaking because it's not worth it anymore. Perhaps they were dismissed by a past leader. Perhaps someone kept interrupting them. What they had to say may have been ignored. They might have been corrected publicly. Perhaps their ideas were shut down with no explanation provided to them. Perhaps they've sat back and they've watched others get punished for their honesty. So silence is data. Notice what you're noticing because often silence is a self-protection. Your team member may be protecting themselves and it may not necessarily be disengagement. What that leads to is what is psychological safety? And this is our second point. Psychological safety is about giving your team permission. It's giving your team permission to say things, and giving your team permission is all about you doing a lot of small things. You don't create safety just by saying, you can speak freely here. That's not enough. You actually create safety by how you respond when your team members do speak up. Now, I just want to remind you that our communication, the way that others receive our communication, around about 55% of that is our nonverbal, and 38% is the way we're using our voice. So we create this feeling of psychological safety by how we respond when they do speak up. So you have some ownership here. If your tone changes when you're challenged, people notice that. Those small things matter. If you're look as though you're going to roll your eyes, those facial expressions, those small things matter. Are you curious when someone speaks up? Or do you immediately move to that defensive position? People watch all of this. They watch and they notice those small things, and then they make a decision about whether they feel safe. And safe isn't about being nice or avoiding tension. Safe is about people actually knowing and feeling really certain that they won't be embarrassed, they won't be punished, or they won't be ignored for contributing. And, you know, the very best teams feel safe enough to disagree. They feel safe enough to challenge their manager or leader, and they feel safe enough to, how to put it, to experiment and to innovate or to disrupt a process or a system that may already have been happening. Yeah? You don't create safety by saying you can speak freely here. It's all those other things. So the third point is this one. You as the leader sets the culture and the climate in your team, and sometimes you're going to get it wrong. And that's okay, because if you realize you've got it wrong, you can fix it up. Your emotional state, how you are, sets the climate. And look, this is a subject that we've talked about for the last 3 weeks about what triggers you and how to manage that and how to have emotional and mental fitness. If you missed those last 3, you can either go in this platform, go down and have a look and see if they're still there. If they're not, reach out, and what we'll do is send you some links to them. But, you know, it's kind of a very short summary of what we covered is this. When you're calm, you're going to enable and encourage contribution. When you're reactive, you're likely to be encouraging silence. Like, the other thing to remember is this. It's not your team's job to manage your emotions. It's not your team's job. It's your job. And if your team is uncertain about your emotions, then what they're going to do is they're going to be silent. And if they do say something because they have no idea how you're going to react to it, they're unlikely to be honest with you. As leaders, we accidentally, many of us accidentally, and some of us purposefully, we shut people down. We interrupt them, we correct them, we tell them why an idea won't work before it's been fully explored. We focus and listen to the loudest voices only. We push people away instead of being curious. And what we do, and this is the one that often happens, and leaders think they're doing the right thing. We've already told them all about what we want to happen. This is our idea. This is what we want to have it look like. And then we ask people what their thoughts are. You're asking them for their thoughts on your idea rather than asking them for their thoughts on the whole big issue. And often people won't want to tell you that there are aspects of what you've presented them with that they don't think will work, or that there's a better way of doing it. So be aware of all of those kinds of things. The fourth point I want to make is that silence is expensive. All of these things come at a cost. If your team isn't talking, then it's likely that there will be some risks that's been missed. It's likely that problems will be delayed because they're not being discussed. Everyone will act as though there's kind of harmony, and there won't be harmony. There'll be things bubbling along underneath the surface. There'll be less innovation, less disruption, less change will be able to be easily implemented. Mistakes will keep being repeated. And what will happen is that as the leader, you'll end up carrying the full load of that. Leadership isn't meant to be heavy. You shouldn't be carrying the full load, but no one will step forward to help because then they will be picked out by others. Now, the important thing for you to understand, and I come back to the first point, that silence is data, so notice what you're noticing. By the time many people stop speaking, they've stopped caring. They're not speaking up. It's because for many people, they've absolutely stopped caring. Okay, let's look at number 5. Point 5, no trust. No trust means that there's no courage to speak. They're not going to speak if they don't trust you. And if you're not regulating and managing your own emotional and mental fitness, they're going to be standoffish. So they must trust you because it takes emotional courage on their part to speak. They figure they're putting themselves out there and they're not quite sure what you're going to do. So this requires that emotional and mental fitness in you as a leader. And what your team needs to believe is that if they're honest, it's not going to backfire on them. You're not going to get back at them for being honest. And this requires really consistent signals from you as the leader. Those behaviours that I mentioned earlier, they should be happening on a consistent basis, not just you suddenly deciding that today, for one meeting, you're going to change. Yeah? Silence is data. Let's look now at a couple of tools that you can use to improve things. The first one is this. After meetings, you know how big I am about this whole reflection thing. Just take a couple of minutes after a meeting. You might even still be sitting in exactly the same spot that you were sitting in. Make some notes. Who spoke up? That way you're going to identify, was it the same people all the time? Who holds back? Again, is it the same people all the time? Who didn't speak and what do you think might be holding them back? Now, some people don't speak up because they don't feel as though they're going to add anything to the conversation. The question to ask yourself is, why are they in the meeting? If they're there as an observer only, then that's quite a different role to be playing. But you don't need someone to be observe. At some point, you want them to have something to say. So after you've done that silent signals check and you've done that over a few meetings that have the same people in it, it can be really useful to go to those people one-on-one and to ask for their input or their opinion about whatever it was that was being discussed outside of the meeting. And in this situation, the pressure is off them, but you're actually starting to hear what they say. Now, remember, you're not going to interrupt. You're not going to tell them that their idea is no good. You're going to actually listen and bring that quiet curiosity to the conversation. So that's the first tool. The second tool is really, it's less of a tool and more of a way of behaving. We want you to behave in a way that makes contribution safer. So here are some things that you can do that will be effective almost immediately, that will, and that will encourage that your team to be speaking up. Ask for people's input about a problem before you share your own opinion. Ask them what they think. That way, there's none of this, oh, I better say that to agree with the boss. I better toe the line. Ask them before you share your opinion. That's the first one. The second one is to invite those quiet voices in. So if you've noticed that someone isn't saying very much, then actually say to them, hey, John, I'm really interested in what your take is. Or, hey, John, I'm curious about what you're making of all of this. And when you name someone like that and invite them in that positive way into the conversation, you're giving them permission to speak. And for many people, that's exactly what they're looking for. The third thing is this, to publicly acknowledge the courage to thank you so much for having the courage to speak up. Courage is as important as whether what they have to say is right or not. So it's all about praising and acknowledging that courage rather than just the correctness of what they're saying. Now, these small things done consistently are going to create a safe environment, and they will really help your team to speak up. Yeah. Some reflection questions for us to have a look at. The first one is this: what happens emotionally in me, meaning you, what happens emotionally in me when someone challenges my thinking? And I've put 3 words here just for you to kind of think about, to actually get this, this reflection happening. Do you get curious? Oh, okay, I'm interested in that. Do you get defensive? Or so that, oh, well, I'm surprised that's what you think. Or do you move into that control space where it's all about push, 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 like, no, I'm not interested in hearing what you have to say. I'm the leader here. It's likely to be a variation of one of those 3 things. Why are we identifying and reflecting on what happens emotionally in you when someone challenges your thinking? If you know that that emotion's coming up, you're going to be able to handle it a whole lot better. And we've talked about this before, naming it and just breathing through it and moving into a positive space. So that's your first reflection question. The second one is this. This is another hard one. Like, if ask yourself, if I were on my team, would I feel safe enough to tell me the truth early? Or only once it's too late? Now, this is a cracker. There's a second part to this question, but before we go on to that, you would be surprised how many people I coach who say to me, why didn't they tell me 3 months ago when it first started happening? Why are they only telling me now once I've realized that this is a problem? It says a lot about how safe people feel communicating with you. And it also has something to do with their courage. Maybe they think that you won't feel the same way. Maybe they think they're being a bit over the top about what they're noticing or feeling. So we want to make sure that people do feel psychologically safe. So think about that. If I were on my team, would I feel safe enough to tell me the truth early or only once it's too late? And what then flows on from that is, what leadership behaviours are you exhibiting that might contribute to your response? So if what you've said is, oh, I think, yeah, I would feel safe. Why? What are the behaviours? What is it that's making you feel safe enough to speak up sooner rather than later, or unsafe? Yeah? They're two really great questions, and I encourage you to take the time, just sit down with a journal and have a think about both those questions. So, key takeaways from today. Silence is data. Notice what you're noticing. Don't just be going, oh, that team, they never say anything. These meetings are just a waste of time because no one speaks up. Have a look at yourself and your behaviours and have a look at them. Remember that your behaviour sets the tone. Your behaviour sets the tone. And it's either going to encourage them to contribute or discourage them and they don't speak. Your behaviour is one of the keys here. And that calmness creates that courage. And when people feel courageous, they're more likely to speak up and they're more likely to be honest with you. So, thank you so much for joining us today. If you've got questions or comments, please pop them in the comments in the platform that you're watching this on, and we'll get back to you as quickly as you can. If you're watching this as a replay, hashtag replay. Love to know that there are people who are watching it as a replay. Look, if you think that you would benefit from more help to build your authority as a leader, to build your influence and your leadership intelligence, please reach out. No pressure, a conversation about what might be broken, what might need fixing. Maybe you're simply stuck right now, and a conversation with me could give you an indication of what might be possible to move you back to being the best version of you that you can possibly be. There'll be a link in the comments. By the way, next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at trust. Team, how do you trust your team? What is it that you need to do to get your team to trust you? Bye now.